Governor, one of the things that's happened in states that don't have as many cases as New York, and nobody has had as many cases as New York, but in the heartland of the country, we saw states and counties, even cities that didn't have very many cases, but then did have very large outbreaks, hundreds and hundreds of cases that were associated with specific workplaces. And it's mostly been these meat processing plants, places like South Dakota and Iowa and Minnesota and Nebraska. And there doesn't seem to be a standard in terms of how those outbreaks get handled, how information around them gets handled, how they get ultimately contained, how communities can prepare themselves when that sort of thing happens in a workplace. You in New York now have a food processing plant that's got a significant number of cases up in rural New York and in Oneida. Green Empire Farm, they've got 169 cases there among 340 workers. I don't feel like we're coming up with a national standard for how to deal with something like that. But as a governor who's dealt with more of this crisis than anybody else, how are you going to tackle that problem at that one food processing plant? And do you expect that it will be one of several?
Short answer is yes, I do expect that. This has nothing to do with meat, right? I know there were meat processing plants. A lot of people have said, well, what is there about meat? It's not about the meat. It's not about the agricultural farm. It's about the density. It's about the gathering. It's about that size. And all it takes is one. The rule of one works, Rachel. All you need is one person who's infected in a mass gathering, a large gathering with density, and they become a super spreader. Another new term I never heard before, but now I never want to hear again. We had the first hotspot in the United States. It wasn't in New York City. It was in New Rochelle, Westchester County, suburban county. And it had nothing to do with the demographics. It was one person who was positive, who went to a couple of gatherings that had 100, 200 people at the gatherings. And now you had the hot spot in the nation. The processing plants, you have 1,000 workers. You have one who gets infected. And now it's fire through dry grass. So, look, we learned the hard way here in New York. But again, go back to the facts, go back to the science, go back to the testing and the tracing, the hospitalization rate, the infection rate. We know how to isolate. It just has to be done. It has to be standardized and executed. And that's what we're doing in New York. It would be nice if we had a national standard to all of this, so it wasn't states informally sharing best practices. You know, I talk to other governors and we share information. But you could have had a national standard, and all the states then can follow the national standard. And it would have been nice if there was funding that went along with that. But this will happen in other parts of the country. I'll bet you tonight that you'll see it pop up wherever you have density and gatherings. And it only takes one, the rule of one.